Hi, Rougheye here. Hope you could see. I got trying to get the guitar to where you could see everything so you'll know what the heck I'm doing. I wanted to talk to people about doing bends for rock and the blues, and seems to be a thing that a lot of students that I teach find a little bit of a stumbling block with. So I wanted to outline the method and the procedure about how to do it. Now, first of all, I'm going to mention, you might see me do this often. And this is an old school trick. Basically, I got there's no locking nut on here. I got a whammy bar, Goto whamming bar. I think that's how you say it. Anyway, if I do that, you can hear it went a little bit out of tune. That brought it back in tune. So what I'll do is I'll tune the guitar and then give it a couple like that and tune it again. And then every time it goes out, doing that, we'll bring it back. You know, like you could hear it's out. Now it's in again. Okay. Now I'm going to work in the key of A, because the numbers are easy to deal with. So the 5th fret here on the 6th string is an A. The 5th fret on the 1st string is also an A. That's going to be our root. Because we're in A, you're playing against an A chord. If you know the minor pentatonic and the blues scale, that's great. But you don't have to. You might end up knowing it by the time we're done here. So you got your A. Those are your 1s. There's also an A here on the 4th string on the 7th fret. So you got the A at the 5th, A at the 7th here, A on the 1st string at the 5th. Next to that, like here, you got the 5. So you've got, you know, if you're in a key of A, you know, you went A, B, C, D, E. E is the 5. You've got an E here, and another one next to this A on the 7th fret on the 5th string. So we got an A on the 6th, on the 5th fret, an A on the 7th fret on the 4th string, and then we got the E next to it on the 5th string on the 7th fret. Those 3 notes, an A, an E, and an A, that's what I call a 1-5-1 chord. It's like a 3-note power chord. And then we got these 5 and the 1 here, the E and the A. Now, when you're bending a note, it's most important not where you're bending from, but it's what you're bending to that's important. So in the case of, like, say we got an A chord, here's an A minor bar chord. The notes are all E's and A's except for there's one C here. And bending up to the note that's in the chord is what's going to make it sound in. You know, so now I always call this the main bend. If you were here on the 5th fret on the 2nd string, the note before it in the scale is a D here on the 7th fret on the 3rd string, and I call that the main bend. The 3rd string, if it's not a wound string, if it's a plain string like most electric guitar set the strings are, it's going to be real easy. This is going to be the easiest string to bend. And if you put your ring finger here, you could put 2 fingers behind it, you got 3 times as much strength. Now, what I'm doing is I'm bending the D, the 4, until it sounds like the E, the 5. And this is an old school riff, you know, like Chuck Berry doing. Now here I'm using 2 fingers, bending on the 7th fret on the 3rd string, and here's the same note on the 5th fret on the 2nd string. If you do them both together, you get that sound like the Jimmy Page, numerous other things. Basically, I call this a full bend. It's bending a whole step. A whole step is 2 frets away. So here we have that D on the 7th fret. If I went up 2 frets, that's the same note. It's just another place to do that E. So that's a full bend. Now, to do a full bend, basically, I'm taking this finger here that's doing the bending, and I get it to where it just barely grazes the string that's 2 strings away. The size of your finger, it's going to vary, you know, so you got to use your ear and say, like, when I'm in this chord, what's going to blend in and be in with the chord. You never want to bend away from a chord tone. You know, like I hear a lot of guys and they'll go like this. You know, that's just, you know, like, here's your chord. You get that clash. Now, you can bend on any note, but the thing is, you got to know what you're bending to. And the 5, you got this blue flat 5 note. So if you don't get far enough, it still sounds good. It sounds real bluesy. Now, aside from that, Chuck Berry, you'll also have heard probably those old-time rock and roll tunes where they'd bend up here and hit both of these. Get that in tune again. I'll hit this bend, and then I'll hit 2 of these. So that's a blues and rock and roll thing. Now also, you can bend the 3. Here's a minor 3. The 4 is here at the 7th fret. The minor 3 is here at the 3rd fret. Now the thing about the blues, and by extension, I guess, too much of rock, I like to think there is no such thing as major and minor. There's no distinction. So a lot of times you'll hear people using a major 3 and a minor 3 together in what they call that Hendrix chord. But also, if you take the minor 3 here, do a little half bend, it turns into a major 3. I always bend up to it. I wouldn't go like that down, but I guess you could. Also, if you bend a little further to a full bend, 2 frets away, it turns into a 4. Now, bending is only part of the thing. When you're going from one note to another, aside from picking the notes, there's 3 different kinds of slurs that you could do on the guitar. One is bending, one is sliding, and one is a hammer-on. And the thing is, you want to get them all to sound the same. They're all accurate. They all have a different sound, but they're all the same accuracy in terms of what pitch you're going to. If I'm going from a D to an E, this is the 7th fret again on the 3rd string, going to the 9. I can slide up, I can hammer on, or I can bend, and they all have, you know, they're all going to the same pitch. Now you could take a melody, you know, like, or play it, or, and they all basically sound like the same tune. You can also bend up to the 1 if here's my 5, here's a 7, here at the 8th fret on the 2nd string, I can do a bend there, bend that up a full step to where it sounds like that 5th fret on the 1st string. This one you got to be more careful with. You don't have, here you could go, you know, like you'll hear Stevie Ray Vaughan doing these all little different degrees of bending the same note. With the 1 going up to the 1, it doesn't quite sound as good if you don't get right to it. By the way, doing this and getting a vibrato at the end, it took me a long time to get that. You got to really have the finger strength. I mean, bending in general, you got to have some strength because you're pushing down on the fret at the same time that you're pushing across. So, and when you let off, you're still pressing this way onto the fretboard, even though you're releasing the tension of the bend. Now, what I wanted to talk about, when you're doing those other ornaments or other slurs, there's a lot of cool things you could do with combining hammer-ons and pull-offs and sliding and bending. There's some real common tricks. One of them is to bend, unbend, and go right into a pull-off. So I'm bending with the third and the second finger. I got all three fingers here. I unbend here and pull the third and the second off to get to that note on the 5th fret on the 3rd string. When I pull off, I'm not just lifting my finger, I'm actually pulling it sideways a little bit. You could do this most easily on the 1st string if you're got 2 fingers here, say the 5th fret and the 7th fret, and you do a pull it off. You know, like don't pull it up, pull it sideways. So if I'm doing a trill, I'm not actually going up and down, I'm going around in a circle this way. It's going down, that way, up, back down, that way. So you could do that with a bend. Now in this way, I'm getting 4 notes basically by bending, unbending, and pulling off after I hit the note. You could do the same thing with a hammer here, and then a double pull off. Pull off from the 8 to the 7 to the 7 to the 5. Another one that's very common is to go from the 5 on the 3rd string, hammer on the 7, pull it off, hammer on the 8, pull it off. And then I like to end it on the 1. That's the 4th string, 7th fret. That's the A. So you mix these up, you got these double pull-offs going to that A, a bend, this to those 2 notes, again that old rock and roll thing. One of the things that I would suggest, if you're going to work out, you know, playing some rock riffs or blues riffs, you know, find that one in the middle and work your way up the scale. You don't use a whole bunch of notes, you know, 4 or 5 notes, and really explore those notes. Remember, if you're speaking to someone, you're making a speech, which I guess playing lead is more like making a speech, you don't try to use every word in your vocabulary in every sentence. Same thing, you don't want to use the whole scale all the time. You want to just get in an area and explore that area. Then maybe you want to move to a different area. Now, this thing that I did here, the 8 to 5 to 7 to 5, you could do the same thing on the 2nd string, going into the 3rd, 8, 5, 7, 5, and then the 3rd string on the 7th fret. You could do the same thing on the 1st fret, or on the 1st string. String them all together. Let's see how out of tune I am. And then there's double bending. I got my pinky on the 2nd string, my ring finger on the 3rd string, and the tricky thing here is I'm bending a half step, 1 fret up on the 2nd string, 2 frets up on the 3rd string. Sounds like from the 7 and 7 to the 8 and the 9. In theory, if I get it right. And that's all I wanted to tell you. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you can put these ideas to use and get some good rock and guitar out of it. Thank you.